Welcome to your weekly interval. This is the best damn nerd show on the Tenno Media Network, the worldwide leader in all streaming entertainment. I'm your host.
I thought you were
Mike
told not to say that again.
No, I changed it up a little bit. They are the worldwide leader, and I stress leader and worldwide. I stress it all in streaming entertainment. I am your host, the microphone alchemist, Bimbo Jimbo. With me tonight, Hall of Fame cyber athlete Jonathan Craig.
You're stressing Segley out by saying that too.
That's all right. We'll get to him in a minute. CSO, Chief Science Officer of Star Labs, Mark Truex.
Nintendo, more like Nintendo don't.
Nothing like a good late 80s, early 90s dig from an inferior console and final boss, Chris Seglia.
You know that Jahns streams too, right?
What do you mean? Yeah, but we're the leader. You know, this is the place. You came to the right place here on the Tenno Media Network, the home of the best damn nerd show.
Oh God,
that's what we're doing here. So welcome back, everybody.
Jesus Christ,
he's having regrets.
I am thrilled
alcohol
to be here with all my best mates and my boss, who has this weird sort of crossover effect there. But welcome back to the Tenno Media Network and the best damn nerd show. We are going to be talking in our main event segment tonight about the Super Nintendo versus
the superior console,
the Sega Genesis, the
Sega.
But before, and again, maybe their perk is their memorable yet annoying, marketing campaign. But
Sega.
I want to catch up with y'all. And Mark, you in particular have a pretty important bit of news that, dare I say, might be more important than the show we're going to do tonight, but I'm not willing to commit to that.
Yeah, I'm about to venture on a new quest. We're growing our guild here at the Truex household, so got a new baby due this December.
Congratulations.
Adding an extra one. So, yeah, thank you. So, yeah,
John
my wife
care.
is pregnant.
No, I'm excited and nervous for you because having
man.
one, I don't. It's hard for me to comprehend how you would have two.
Yeah,
because one is already so overwhelming.
Right? Just like your son's what, 2?
18 months.
18 months? So give it another
Dave
12 months. You're going to be like, I forgot what that was like. Let's do it again.
Oh, man. It's hard to imagine forgetting what that was like. But
well,
yeah.
I mean, I do have to say, Marcella, Mark's lovely daughter, is just an absolute delight and a joy to be around. And it's, you're doing such a great job, you and Joe, raising her. So I have no doubt that, you'll do an equally great job with number 2. But it is crazy as she's getting older that she understands stuff. Like being down there at last year's Comic-Con and showing her those like DC picture books, and she'd be like, Superman, and then start running around the house pretending she's flying. Like the fact that she's already formulating that, like, scared the crap out of me.
Yep, she's starting to know all the secret identities like Diana Prince and Oliver Queen. It's really good.
You started her on DC characters, not Marvel characters.
Yeah.
Well,
not an animal. I'm not going to give her an SNES. She's going to get the good stuff in life. All right.
This is going to be easier than I thought.
Mark's subheading, really the read between the lines of what Chief Science Officer of Star Labs is DC lapdog Mark Truex. So that's what he's always been. Yeah.
You're the guy?
I'll lap up everything that's great.
The one. He's the one.
If it's good.
Zack Snyder?
Yeah, Zack Snyder's great. God, Sucker Punch, dude. Just
Sucker Punch was crap. We'll
right
get
in
into
the face
that
of awesome.
But congratulations, Mark. That is really awesome that you're growing your family, and I'm looking forward to 2 future co-hosts to replace you with, both here on the show and on the website. So that will be great. But you also did a little bit of comic book reading, did you not?
I did. This past week, I actually finished up the Boys series by Garth Ennis, which, of course, was turned into an Amazon Prime original series last year.
Fantastic show.
So since then, just read through the entirety of it, all 6 omnibus volumes. And my God, dude, this is an amazing, amazing comic book. What's great is about the show is if you like the show, many of the same kind of beats and things that are happening in it are, of course, in the comic, but just done in such a completely different way that you can enjoy both simultaneously, I'm not nerding out like in anger that it's so changed or different. It's just crazy how they're approaching these different storylines, but the heart of it's still there. The vulgarity of it's still there. The intrigue of the character development still there. There's actually a lot more character development going into, I feel like, with some of the characters in the TV series as well. If you like that show in the slightest, dude, the book was so good. I can't wait to talk about it here.
I understand Starlight's initiation process was even more intense in the comic than it was in the show.
Yeah, it was like 300% more intense.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to reading it and discussing the boys more so on the Best Damn Nerd Show yet again as we roll along here. But Seglia, you earned a particular distinction as well this week.
So I've been on a lot of phone calls in the last week. If you don't know, we're recording this in June, and in July, Evo is happening 5 weekends straight. So that means there's a lot of phone calls happening.
Dude. That's insane, by the way. What an undertaking for you guys.
That means there's a lot of translation going on for my phone calls, and that means I have a lot of free time during these phone calls too. So I got platinum in TFT in League of Legends. During the translation, I basically say yes 3 times in an hour-long call. But basically, there's about 10 minutes worth of translation. I'm usually either playing Civilization or I'm playing TFT. And Civilization, I was getting a little too mad about it. So I was playing TFT and I was just kind of forcing a comp. For those of you who don't know what TFT is, if you've played League of Legends before, it's basically an auto battler or auto chess for League of Legends. Dota was doing it for a while, and then everybody stopped playing it. And everybody's now playing the League of Legends version, the good version of it. And it's a horrible, horrible game. Don't play it. It's trash. It's boring. It's whatever. But I got platinum in it, so therefore everybody suck it. I'm very good at it.
Great work.
Carter, aka Hanzo Gonzo, who's an Iron Nerd and a part of a couple other shows here on the Tenno Media Network, is a Grandmaster, which means he's a top 100 in the world.
Good Lord.
Fuck him. All right.
Well, you got to take him down. You got to surpass him. Is there a level past Grandmaster?
No, there's not.
Damn.
It's insane.
The problem with that is that there is no skill in this game. I've just been playing it a lot. So I've been getting, that's how I got platinum. I went from silver to gold to platinum by just doing the exact same thing and just, shoving my head through a wall, and it's been working. And Carter says he does the exact same thing too. So,
well, as long as you have fun.
With auto battlers, it feels like there's like 3 different skill levels. There's the skill level where you know nothing, so you're just kind of buying at random. Then there's the skill level where you've mastered like 1 or 2 builds and you just force it every single game. And then there's the skill level where you maybe know like 4 builds and you can like transition mid game if you see like things heading in a certain direction. It's
all RNG. It doesn't matter if you can transition. That's great. That just means you made a horrible decision at the first part. It means you were to make a craps reference, you were on 4 and 6 instead of 6 and 8 the entire time. So
that's great.
Craps is a gambling game, and for those of you who don't know, I gamble a lot. So
I enjoy gambling.
You're gambling on James for the whole concept of this show.
I actually
I hope it works out.
James, who would have thought I built whatever the hell it is, if this is even success, and then everything is going to be reliant on James and then Davis keeping his mouth shut half the time.
Well, one of those is the pass line and one of those is the do not pass line. So you kind of betting against yourself there. But I mean, congrats on getting platinum. And really, I mean, when you're talking about Evo, I mean, did I not say the worldwide leader
right now? Stop.
The worldwide leader. John, what did you get up to? The worldwide leader. What did you get up to this week?
My week has been a lot less eventful. I've done a couple missions on Red Dead 2 story mode. James, you'll be happy to hear that.
I am very happy to hear that. I love getting your updates about Arthur's, forlorn love, Mary.
Well, yeah, it's heartbreaking, and there was definitely a moment where I wanted to shoot her brother, who had become a religious extremist, but I ended up saving him, and I'm hoping that plays out in the long run, favorably, but we'll see.
Yeah, how do you feel about the story mode of the game? First of all, I'm very proud that you're even playing the story mode of
It's a grind. It's a grind.
It's not a grind. It's great fun.
No, it's been fun. It's I'm just trying to focus on like I'm like I'll walk down a road or I'll ride down a road and like someone will be like, hey, psst, hey, come over here, let's talk. And I just like put my head down and ride past everybody because I'm like, it's gonna be so hard. It's gonna take so much time. It'd be so hard to even finish the story mode if I only do the story missions. But let alone like me branching off and doing all the other parts of the game. Like, there's no way, dude. I'll never finish the game.
Have you at least cataloged your herbs and spurs? Like,
I will return to those kinds of things when I finish the story mode, but I cannot do it while I'm trying to finish the story.
When was the last time you played a single player game? Because you're a what the hell is your name? A cyber athlete now.
What I do is I end up playing them often, and then I'll get like a third the way through and just quit forever and never go back. I did it with Skyrim. I did it with The Witcher. Yeah, I mean the only single player game that I really stuck to, I did it with Borderlands 3 recently. The only single player game I stuck to was Risk of Rain. But that's not really the same. It's not a story game. It's just like a roguelike shooter. Yeah, which is just mindless fun.
As a competitive gamer, what I call myself, which is not a good competitive gamer, I'm just a competitive gamer now, is that I cannot play single player games anymore.
I know, it's tough. It's really
every
tough.
year I buy myself a single player game to play, and I'm like, you know what? After Evo, I'm gonna do nothing for 2 weeks except play this game. I fire it up after it downloads for like an hour and a half, even after I buy the fucking disc. I turn it on, I watch the opening cutscene, and I go, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why am I doing this right now? And I just turn it off. I'm like, well, there goes another $60. And I just start playing League of Legends again, or Civ, or now Valorant. Shout outs to
I really, really struggle with games that are too cutscene heavy. Like I prefer ones where the story is kind of happening like while you're doing stuff in the game. And Red Dead is pretty good about that, although there definitely are moments where it's cutscene heavy. Like a lot of the dialogue and story comes out as you're on your way to something, which helps like move things along. But yeah, dude, single player games are rough.
If you haven't noticed yet, you'll have like the same set of dialogue, but they must have had to record it a million times because they can say the same lines in mission. If you're far away on your horse, they'll shout it at you. It's wild.
Yeah.
Such a great game. I'm so excited that you're experiencing the story mode. When I last spoke with Imperial Commissar Jeff Budd and quote lore master Tim Childs, they said that you had a problem riding your horse in the multiplayer version, and that you rode into Tim's parked horse, killing both.
Jeff's.
Oh, was it Jeff's?
I had 3 accidents that night. I ran into Jeff's horse, and then it caused a full-scale melee with the local law enforcement. I rode my horse off of a cliff, which cost us one of our 2 lives on one of the missions that we did. And then when we were first getting set up, I don't even know if the guys noticed this, but I like was riding down the road at full speed and crashed into a cart and killed a guy. And then I had to ride off because the police showed up and were like investigating the murder. So yeah, I'm better on foot. But sometimes you just got to ride somewhere. Sometimes you're going somewhere far away and you just have to get on the horse, and God only knows what happens when I
Can you hop on the back of Jeff's horse?
No, we don't role play
with him.
I actually was doing that for a while. I blame Davis for this though, because I was like riding on the path, I was being safe, I was being courteous, and then Davis is like, why are you guys riding on the path? Just cut straight through the forest to the whatever. And then I cut through the forest and went off of a cliff and died. So I'm like, dude, I'm not a good horse rider in the game. Like I need to follow the path, the straight and narrow, you know what I mean? It might take me a little longer, but
this makes me feel fantastic. Just hearing your struggles with that just makes me feel great.
Look, where it counts, I have the skill. Like if they showed you just like the quantity of like kills and headshots at the end of a mission, I would definitely be at the top of the leaderboard. But they don't do that in this game, so
John looking for DPS charts in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there even crosshairs in that game?
There is, but the auto aim is like so strong that you basically just tap one button and it bumps you across the map.
Oh my gosh. Well, I look forward to you continuing on in the real game, which is story mode, and continuing to kill other people's horses in online. But we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to start getting into Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. More on the other side on the Best Damn Nerd Show coming up. And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show on the Tenno Media Network. I'm your host, Microphone Alchemist Bimbo Jimbo. With me tonight, John Craig, Mark Trex, Chris Seglia, and we are talking Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis. We're going to start getting into it right now, but we're going to dip our toe in and just sort of how did we get here? What did you grow up playing on? And just just sort of both consoles, which right off the top here are near and dear to many people's hearts. Some would say Super Nintendo near and dear to many more, given the number of units they sold. But we'll get into that later on. So Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. How did you first get into it? When did you get into it? Were you playing at friends' houses? John, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I mean, my pathway in is pretty simple. I discovered my dad's like Atari in the closet one day, and for some reason, I guess he didn't realize that like his 4-year-old son or however old I was would like to play Atari. So once I found it and saw like all the cartoons on the covers, he plugged it in and I got hooked. And so he went out and got me a Genesis, and that was really the first console that like I owned. And then I don't think I ever owned more than like 2 or 3 games for it, but we were just a Blockbuster family. So like every Thursday or Friday we'd go to Blockbuster and get some stuff for the weekend. So I played probably every title that was available at Blockbuster during that time.
I was
and
more
then
of a Hollywood video guy myself.
Be quiet.
Shocker.
It's disgusting.
I mean, I know Mark.
It's
Mark,
disgusting.
I don't mean to besmirch your old vocation, but I liked Hollywood Video.
I worked at Blockbuster
The original,
for 5
the
years.
5-day rentals.
It was
Yeah,
a
Mark,
magical time.
I worked at Hollywood Video. I worked at Hollywood Video in college actually for
go.
like a year. So we're
right.
natural born rivals. But also like my cousin and one of our neighbors had Super Nintendo, and my cousin one weekend we would like split weekends. Like I would go to his house one weekend and do a sleepover. He'd come to mine. And like I said, he was a Super Nintendo kid. And one time we went to like the Active Video, which was like a Blockbuster knockoff, to rent some games. And the whole time on the way there, he was telling me like, oh my God, I gotta poop. And he couldn't hold it anymore. And so he shit himself in the Active Video. And we finished the rental. So we went home.
God.
We went home. He had
You
had
guys did a
duty.
round table lunch buffet beforehand, or what was the deal?
Dude, he had duty in his pants the whole ride home. Got home, showered, and changed. But from that point on, like I think I just realized like people that play Super Nintendo also shit their pants, and I just don't want to be associated with that. So I could never bring myself to. I could never bring myself to own one.
Okay, so bad parenting and bad association is how John ended up on the Sega. I got it. Seglia, how did you sort of approach both these consoles when you were younger?
Well, first and foremost, I work with Nintendo, and they have Nintendo Ninjas, so I will do nothing to besmirch them ever.
Yeah, no,
but
we're here for you, Nintendo.
I also had an Atari growing up, but I got it pretty late. I was a pretty sheltered child as a kid, and one day we were walking in my neighborhood, and these 2 kids, like teenagers, had their Atari plus all their games. They had like 20 games out, and they're like for sale because we need to buy a Super Nintendo.
Oh wow!
And I didn't have anything like that as a kid growing up. But my dad walked by, and he's actually a very good Pac-Man player. Even now, he was like, "Oh shit, they have Pac-Man. Let's buy that for Chris, right? For Chris."
Yeah.
We set it up, and I had a pretty natural ability with Pac-Man, and my dad was like, damn, this is pretty good. So we played the Atari with those 20 games for 3 or 4 years, probably even during the Super Nintendo coming out. And one Christmas, I got a Super Nintendo, and I was stoked, right? Yeah. This was, I was probably in preschool or kindergarten or something like that. And we hooked it up. I actually knew how to hook it up. I've read the instruction manuals. I was like 6 or 7. I hooked it up to my grandparents' TV at the time, plugged it in, and I beat the first 4 levels of Super Mario World, and I was hooked at that point as like a 7-year-old. Yeah. Like, oh my God, what is happening? We don't even know what's going on. Super Nintendo it's just too good, man. Like the library of games for Super Nintendo is amazing. Like
it's staggering even today.
I have the Super Nintendo. Well, I have the original one sitting next to me, but I also have the remade one. All of those games are good.
Yeah,
minus Star Fox 2, but all of those games are good. Like they're, you got Street Fighter, you got Super Mario World. You can go on and on and on. People will turn that shit on and be like, "Wow, these games were amazing for back in the day."
And still carries on today with quite a few of them. The replay value. Mr. Truex, another Genesis man.
Absolutely.
How did you enter this fray?
So, unlike our other two here, I did not have an Atari as my first console. I had an Intellivision, which was fantastic on a... I don't know if you've ever played them, but they had a little like spin dial doohickey for the directional pad.
Mark just had those handheld,
and it was like a D9
like
pad. It was like a touch pad, like a phone that you would insert these slips into for corresponding like pitch, hit, and then you would trade it out per game for the different, button coordination. So that was my original intro to that. And so when I was probably like 5 or 6 is when I got the Sega Genesis. And it was sexy.
Rocked your world.
It was so sexy. I mean, I didn't have to switch out the cover slips on the controller to know the buttons. It was just labeled right there. It was black and sleek and curvy. Just awesome
a low
system.
bar.
But it was good.
Like Mark's affiliation is just that it was better. It was better than essentially playing with the video game equivalent of a kaleidoscope.
Hey, I mean, Intellivision was cool. You had Intellivision skiing where you couldn't make it down the hill without dying on a tree. You had a snafu, which is basically like Snake. It was snafu.
I genuinely hope that your arguments get better than this, Mark, because
can I start now?
Where we've started is rough, but
yeah.
I'm hoping that you're holding that off for the next segment.
But Sega just blew my mind. And I got so many games for it over the year, still have them. And just playing from initially Sonic the Hedgehog, how lightning fast that was, just running through levels. That was the pre-bundled game that came with the console at the time. Was amazing. Yeah. Just hours on hours of Tasmania.
They had to shoehorn in a memorable character.
Hey, big blockbuster movie just came out in the past few months. Jim Carrey, remember how hot he was in the 90s when this came out?
It only took him 30 years.
John Leguizamo.
Sure.
Yeah, Bob Hoskins.
Sure.
God rest his soul.
All right, we can stop now.
But so for me, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Well, so my introduction, it was not through the Atari. We were a Nintendo family from the start. The original Nintendo Entertainment System is, still one of my favorites. Still think back fondly of my time playing Nintendo, whether it was the original Legend of Zelda or it was a game that I was even through emulators still will get addicted to it if I hazard to turn it on, which was Pirates, which I used to rent every week before we finally bought it from either Hollywood Video or Blockbuster. That game way ahead of its time, but that's a topic for another time. My dad was obsessed with Bomberman for Nintendo. Still to this day,
Excitebike is one of the best games ever made.
Anytime video games come up with my dad, it's like, remember Bomberman? Like my dad was a Bomberman player. He should have gone pro. But that was sort of my introduction into video games was the original Nintendo. And I just remember when the Super Nintendo came out and certain titles coming out for Super Nintendo was the first time in my life that it was like destination programming. It was like release dates were important. I remember when Super Star Wars came out, a franchise that we'll talk about later on. But, my brother had it marked. It was like, it's coming out. We got to go to the game store to get this kind of deal. And, games weren't cheap then either.
They're more now, or they were more then than they are now.
They were like $70 back then or something.
Easy.
So, it's funny to sort of reflect back on that. And, but that was my introduction to Nintendo and then moving into Super Nintendo and, played a lot of Street Fighter 2 Turbo on Super Nintendo. And we'll talk a lot more about that. But I guess before we venture off into game catalogs and the pluses and minuses of each. Just I guess your quintessential favorite game for each one. Mark, we'll start with you for the Genesis.
Quintessential, probably Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, baby. That was awesome. MJ and Bubbles saving the kids through the power of dance. Undeniably one of the best games of the era. Doesn't matter what console it was. Fantastic.
Oh my god.
This debate's going to be much easier than I thought.
Are you kidding me? No, that's a phenomenal game. Without a doubt. Have you played it?
Does it include the trial that came afterward, or is that an expansion or a DLC?
How dare you? But yeah, you can fight criminals through the power of dance. You take your hat off and you blow them up. It was amazing.
Was he like look in a mirror?
Yeah, it had all the soundtracks. You had Smooth Criminal. You're going through like the Beat It scenes with Street Gangsters, Thriller. You were fighting zombies.
I'll bet there were Beat It scenes.
Yeah. It was a fantastic game. It was a fantastic
What about
game.
Super Nintendo? What was your favorite Super Nintendo game?
So for me, again, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, although, they had the Champion Edition, which was, much less revered on Sega and stuff like that. Street Fighter 2 Turbo is definitely one that stood out to me. Link to the Past, though, is probably the one that stands at the very top for me as well. A lover of the original Legend of Zelda and, the sequel, and then for Super Nintendo to, take it up a whole nother level there. I always look back very fondly on that. And then F-Zero as well, I have to say, which we'll circle back to. John, how about you for your Sega games?
I mean, Sonic and Knuckles was probably like my favorite moment because you had the replayability of all the other games, added a new element to it. But I got really into this game that a lot of people may not have heard of, called Comix Zone, which is basically like a side scroller, I guess, action game where you're like playing in the cells of comics, and like the transition from level to level is like page turns and stuff. Like it was a really cool creative take on that genre, and very, very fun. But there's lots of great titles which I'm sure we'll get into, and some of the ones that you mentioned which were also available for Sega Genesis and arguably better. So looking forward to it.
Seglia, your favorite Super Nintendo game growing up?
I have so many, but gun to my head, I would have to say Super Mario World. As a prerequisite of getting married, I made Annika play Super Mario World. I streamed it, and I had to take it down because she was swearing at me too much. She never got past World 1-1 ever. And, that's the beginning. She died from I don't know if you guys remember, but there's a Goomba that slides down to teach you how to jump. She died to that at least 1,000 fucking times. I swear to God.
My God.
And so she never got past it. She got past World 1-1 up to World 1-3 when there's water. No more. That was it. I still married her.
No wonder you hired a phony minister to do it like me, though. I get it
you're
now.
Jesus-y and stuff, I guess.
You have an out, so that's great. No, that for me, I meant to mention, in terms of being exposed to the Sega Genesis, though, and the fact that I assumed people that played Sega Genesis were poor or white trash. that was sort of my take on it, which is weird because where I lived at the time, one of the richest friends that I had, he played Sega Genesis. I was just what an eccentric rich strango to really be. It was like when Jasmine sneaks out of the palace, I guess, to like hang out in the market.
Well,
all my rich friends had a Genesis too.
To be fair, I think James grew up in a very strong Protestant upbringing, and he was afraid of the vulgarity and adult nature that Sega brought to the table. He wanted his family entertainment of Nintendo, so he just thought down upon Sega because it wasn't willing to pull back its punches.
You're not entirely wrong there. That I think Sega did, especially with the advent of Mortal Kombat and stuff like that, because it had blood.
Yeah.
It was like had some sort of
Real
edge
blood.
to it that they tried to
Red.
shoehorn in there. But I just like the fact that SNES had more colors and just better everything else. But in terms of, I guess, the social aspect of both of these games, do you have any memories that stand out other than your friend shitting himself, John?
That was my cousin.
Of playing with one another.
That was my cousin Graham. I love him very much.
I was trying to let him off the hook. I'm sorry, Graham. Fuck.
I mean, I have great memories of going over to my friend's house and playing Street Fighter, and on Super Nintendo, and playing Mario RPG, which I feel like is one of the best games on Super Nintendo, definitely. And then having people
so good
over.
it wasn't even on my list, but thank you.
Yeah. And then I had another friend, this like Mormon kid that lived down the street, that his parents bought him Mortal Kombat, and I guess didn't like understand like what the game was about somehow. I don't even know how it's possible, but they hid it from him. But every time they were out doing something and like his sister was babysitting and basically not paying attention, we would go take the copy of the game, turn on blood mode on Sega, and just start uppercutting the shit out of each other for hours on end. This same kid, like growing up, wasn't allowed to like drink soda or anything, and one day we went into his garage and stumbled upon like multiple shelving units of Coca-Cola that were hiding out there. So his parents were hiding all kinds of shit. I don't know what they were really up to, but I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun playing Mortal Kombat with this kid.
That is funny. The whole because I had a similar experience in terms of Mortal Kombat, that it was like this taboo thing, but you know, we'd go downstairs and the parents were busy catching up or whatever, and it's like they put in Mortal Kombat and turn on blood mode, and it was this sort of cool, sort of risque thing that you were doing, which it's a plus in certain senses.
Well, and I gotta say, like that moment in time and that game specifically captured something and ignited this like violence in video games debate, which still rages on today in different times. I think Mortal Kombat was probably the first game that really brought that debate to the forefront. I think Grand Theft Auto picked up where they left off at a certain point. And then games are definitely touching on that now.
They created the ASRB because of Mortal Kombat.
Said
Boom.
Yeah, and look, like I love Mortal Kombat, and I love I love the franchise.
Though.
I've worked with the team, and I like I like the game and the franchise. I think that they will always be searching for the cultural relevance and the icon status that they reached with those first 3 games, because it just like it's impossible to describe like the power and the effect that had on society, specifically like blood. Like the goriness of that game was just incredible.
They're chasing that dragon for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Mark, what about you playing with friends?
It was a big thing that my brother and I would actually play together with, having a sibling growing up who was a little older than I, but we would sit down and play Road Rash 2. Which was amazing.
That's such a great game.
Such a fun racing game that you can whack each other with chains and billy clubs. Like
nunchucks, dude. Yeah. You can nunchuck your opponent as you're racing down the road.
So good. So that was like just hours of entertainment, falling off your bike, running after it while your siblings like nagging you or you're nagging them back. Playing Super Nintendo at my cousin's house or with you, James. We would play through quite a bit there. Real Monsters sucks.
Yeah, that game.
But
like they weren't all winners.
But
that was a good one.
Like a big thing if we're talking
Fighters?
about Clay Fighter was cool. I like Clay Fighter.
Yeah, Clay Fighter.
But if we're talking about the social aspect of it, like one of the bigger things was really antisocial for me, because I would remember like being sick and couldn't go to school, right? Just so I could play like Thunder Force 3 over again. Or try to beat Maximum Carnage because I had a rental that was due back in like a couple days. Like, I'm ill. I gotta sit down and like play this right now and just hammer through it. So,
did you ever play Skitchin, Mark?
Skitchin?
It was kind of like Road Rash, but it was a rollerblading game where you could like hold on to the back of cars and like beat the hell out of people as they were trying to pass you on their rollerblades.
No, that sounds awesome.
which by the way, like I think that came out at a time where rollerblading was either at its peak or like already on the downslide, but rollerblading is coming back in full force right now, dude. Like driving around K-Town, there are tons of people on rollerblades. It's I don't know where it came from. I don't know if like Logan Paul has started rollerblading, but it is the hot thing right now.
I didn't partake the first time. I won't be partaking this time. Seglia, how about you with sort of the social aspect of these consoles?
I was a big rollerblader back in the day. Just
really?
FYI, roller hockey. Yeah, the Mighty Ducks. Speaking of hockey, I used to play sports games all the time on the Super Nintendo because I was in a big sports family. We would play NHL '94 a lot.
Yeah.
That was a great game.
I was always the LA Kings with Luke Robitaille and Wayne Gretzky.
Better on Genesis, you had blood.
Yeah, but I didn't care about that. I just wanted to win.
The fight,
and guess what I did?
Just beam out of their head
the
on
best
the
hockey
ice.
game was Blades of Steel for the original Nintendo anyway.
Blades of Steel was all right, but yeah, I mean, this was the game I got. I didn't get to choose or anything like that. That and Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball were my two probably most played games out of all of them. Mostly because I could play them without my parents complaining about what's going on. Gotcha. You know, like they understood what baseball was, they understood what hockey was, and you know, I had to win the Stanley Cup, guys. But outside of that, the social aspect of it, you know, we would go over to friends' houses and play. Whenever I went to, like I said before, my rich friends' houses, they would always play Sega Genesis.
So weird that so many rich people were into the poor person console. Whatever,
bro. You don't. Sega was the rich person console in my opinion because it had the first DLC, Sonic and Knuckles.
So strange.
Anyway, we would play games on Genesis, and then actually I would bring my Super Nintendo over to my friends' houses, and then we would turn on the greatest game of the Super Nintendo's tenure, Turtles in Time.
Oh,
and then I would actually be able to speed run that game as a kid, and I would beat the living shit out of it. We would get to the final Shredder boss, and everyone's like, "Whoa, can you come over to my house and beat that game for me?" And I'd be like, yes. And that was what I did in like first and second grade. And awesome. I was like the most popular kid in town. It was all downhill from there.
Dude, Turtles in Time is one of those landmark multiplayer experiences, though.
And we made it like 10 times.
Yeah. It really is. And I think something that we've all hit on here, too, is something I missed, the idea of renting games and playing them with friends and needing to power through them before you have to take them back. And just there is something that we have lost as gamers, you know, as you know, the blockbusters, the Hollywood videos have gone away and stuff like that.
It's not just that. It's like the idea that you could beat a game in 2 days. Like, you know, with a game that takes 60 hours just to beat like the base game, you're just not going to beat it in a rental period. And games were just designed different back then. And I think, you know, a lot of these games, you know, not having like saves or anything like that as well made it, you know, raise the stakes even more. And I mean, I remember not being able to beat certain levels of games on Genesis and like screaming and crying in my room and having my mom come in and be like, you know, you can just put the game down and like take a break for a while, right? I'm like, I can't. I the water level on Sonic, I have to struggle through this. Like, this is, my mom didn't understand like the philosophical struggle that I was going through, you know, like I was carving out my identity in those moments.
It was like you were drowning every time.
Yeah, exactly.
Did Genesis have the so for most SNES games, if you paused it after like 5 minutes, it would unpause? Did that happen?
I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
For some games for Super Nintendo, I'm pretty sure it was Super Mario World too. That if you pause it,
I don't think so, because I think I would leave games paused like overnight. You know what I mean? Like I would come back in the morning and like pick up where I left off.
Because I tried that. I used to try that all the time, and it would be unpaused for sure. Sucks. It would be like, you know, on a death screen, I'd be fucking livid, or my parents would just unpause it, and I don't remember.
Yeah. James, I think another thing that we're kind of touching on here, like before we really, you know, get at each other's throats on which console's better, is like this era of gaming was such a special time. And, you know, for Sega definitely, but I would argue that for Nintendo in some ways, like it is an era that they are chasing, and they found a really cool stride with Switch, and they found N64 was amazing, but like NES and Super Nintendo was such a special time and special cultural moment. It's just so different now, man. Things have changed.
It's very different now. You're right. It was a special time for gaming. It's interesting because this debate, Sega Genesis versus Super Nintendo, I think maybe just given how old we were at the time, though, it felt the most prevalent. It felt the most sort of like side-driven. Maybe you could argue PlayStation and N64, but this one felt like more the classic, like which one you were on kind of deal. But it was, you know, a special time for gaming, and there's there really hasn't been anything quite like it.
Well, I think it
since.
was the first time really you had a secondary console rise up to challenge the monolith that was Nintendo at the time, that just pushed both of them harder to carve out how much space they had in the video game console world. Nowadays, it's like given, there's 2 or 3 systems, and there's kind of this symbiotic relationship with them going forward in a way where back in the early 90s, they were fighting tooth and nail, taking stabs at each other. Now it's almost like they're not acknowledging each other anymore and what other people are doing.
That's lost. I think something that's lost too is just, it goes back to the Blockbuster and Hollywood Video thing, is just going into the rental section and picking up a game that you think looks cool, as opposed to a game that now, in the age we live in, you're told that's going to be cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different now, and I think it makes it harder for a lot of the independent game developers or maybe smaller titles and stuff like that. But a lot of people discovered the same games because, look, if the guy on the cover art did his job, that's the game you were renting, and you discovered some hidden gems that way.
Well, for Super Nintendo, there was a thing that they put on, and this is going to spoil my argument a little bit, but they had a certificate of excellence on the box, and you had to get that in order to become a Super Nintendo game. There was a lot of logistical shit going on with that too, but there were only a finite number of Super Nintendo games released at a certain time because they wanted to make sure it was quality. So that's for Super Nintendo. That's why you only got a certain amount of games with a certain amount of developers. There was a lot of politics back in the day too. But
this brings up an interesting point too, which is like games now, because it's all like, primarily digital downloads or, basically an unlimited quantity of discs. Like there's never a shortage. Whereas like you would go to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video week after week and be like, dude, they still don't have the Page Master game? What the hell? And then they'd finally have it, and you'd bring it home, and the like cartridge would be corrupt in some way. And you're like, what? I've been waiting for weeks.
This is the further generation, but I never had an N64. I was a PlayStation kid, but we would always camp out for Cruisin' USA because there was only one at my Blockbuster, and we would actually go, like it was like a like a midnight release or a shoe drop nowadays, but we would go at 6 a.m. as a fucking 12-year-old to Blockbuster, and parents would be like, why are you up right now? Like, we got to go to Blockbuster and beat everybody there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they restock the shelves at night. It totally makes sense.
Yeah, Mark knows that better than anybody.
We stock them constantly. Animals out there.
You were probably keeping them from everybody.
Mark was hoarding.
Oh yeah,
something for sure. You got to keep
something would come in. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna put that in the counter for me. It was fantastic. That and getting to play games and movies like at least a week or two beforehand. Awesome.
Fucking
yeah. I mean, if there is a takeaway from the show so far, it's that I really do miss the idea of renting video games and playing more so with my friends as opposed to in solitary. But we're gonna take another quick break. When we come back, we're gonna go through some of the game catalog of both these systems, the best and maybe the low points for each of them, but more Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis on the other side on the Best Damn Nerd Show.
Sega.
And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. Bimbo Jimbo here with Chris Seglia, Jonathan Craig, and Mark Truex. We are going to be getting into now the meat of the debate between Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Opening statements on why Sega Genesis is better according to Team Sega, which is Mark and John. Marco, kick us off. You guys won the coin toss.
So Sega Genesis entered a field where it was predominantly, basically dominated by Nintendo at the time, as we discussed. And Sega came in with a lot of fun new ideas, a lot of things that were pushing the envelope that really helped redefine and change the gaming industry as we know it. It truly did. Don't do that face. So not only did it have a sexier console that was sleek, black, and curvy, and unlike that atrocious gray box, the thing was hideous. The ergonomical controller as well was just better for gaming. Got to protect your hands for those long hours getting after it.
Especially the 6-button layout, much better.
Oh, the 6-button was super sleek.
Especially for Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Just a more native experience.
Yeah, it was more like going to the arcade. Yeah. It's much better. Who needs left and right toggles in a fighting game? Get out of here. Yeah, disgusting. But
can I talk yet or no?
No.
Okay.
Still opening statements.
I'll let you lead us off when we go over to us.
Yeah. In addition to that, it's like just the inventive nature and fun nature of it as being a gaming system with more attitude, them having fun with different characters in the opening sequences of the Sega, getting interested with, Cool Spot, Sonic, everything in between. And then even just innovative things that pushed past that, such as like all the extra cartridging like Sonic and Knuckles for plugins. Things like the what was it, the Sega Network, where you can actually do downloadable content for the first time.
The first streaming downloadable games. Yep, Sega Channel.
Was invented by them. Maybe they bit off more than they could chew. Doesn't matter. This revolutionized what you're able to do at home. They were forward thinking. No, it worked. It just wasn't very viable in the long run.
Not viable.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're forward thinking on it. And it's really what gaming is nowadays. Did Nintendo do that? No, they just sat back in their stuffy offices, collecting checks, limiting people what they can get, limiting third-party producers to make these fun games that are out there. Let's have fun. That's what games are for. Stuffy Nintendo.
I do agree that games are for fun. That is true, but that's a philosophical difference that John Craig and I share.
Fun is in the eye of the beholder. I to piggyback off of what Mark is saying, I think for every great genre that SNES quote unquote dominated or won, Sega had an alternative that was better, and we can get into the game catalog later. But I want to touch on something here. Well, actually, before I do, I also just want to say a lot of the ports that were for both consoles, the more difficult versions were for Sega, which naturally so. I mean, SNES players were more childlike, more family-oriented, and just not as good at gaming in general. Great example of that is the Aladdin game.
So good.
Carpet level was so much harder, and just the more like realistic and serious tone of the games. But I want to touch on something here because I think it's important to state. Yes, did SNES sell more copies? Yeah, they sold 20 million more consoles overall, which in some people's mind, in some people's mind, that means that they won, right? In the same way that like Transformers as a movie wins, right? In the same way that the modern day Star Wars movies win. If you guys are basing your whole argument on something that's more broad is better, then I think we need to go back and kind of question all of James's opinions on everything else that he thinks throughout the history and future of the Best Damn Nerd Show. Because to me, the fact that Sega was able to come into a space that was dominated by Nintendo and sell almost 30 million copies, but be more niche because the quality was so much better. It's not about going broad. It's about hitting your niche audience and hitting them exactly right, because you're committed to quality, not quantity. And that's exactly what SNES did, is quantity. And that's why you dumbasses had to blow on your cartridges through your t-shirt before you had to play a game.
You had to do that for Sega too.
Hey, I never once did that.
But I will let Seglia kick us off, but I do have some things to say.
First of all, I'm not very thrilled that James is on my side, FYI. So I might be fighting a losing battle. I know this.
In front of them.
I'm going to go offensive. This is something that Nintendo never needed to do, and Sega had to. With the Nintendo Don't campaign, that bullshit little thing. Sure, Sega might have been cooler to people who with televisions and stuff like that, but Nintendo didn't need to do that. It was way more fun, no matter what. The other two people on this side, John Craig and Mark Truex, out of the two of them, we've had some crazy, horrible taste here already in this episode.
Okay, here we go.
Already.
Here we go.
First of all,
I said Mario RPG was good. How you can't refute that?
We're not
their favorite game is the Genesis the Michael Jackson Moonwalker.
Prove me wrong.
It was horrible.
Changed
I think
my
the
mind.
world proved you wrong. Was there a second one?
They didn't need a
Thank you.
second one when you
Thank
nail
you.
it the first time. How
Yeah,
many
the
Marios have there been?
The second one was Ronald McDonald's Treasureland Adventure, dude. Go get yourself a Happy Meal and come home and
Your
fucking
favorite game starred a guy
try
that
and catch the Hamburglar.
You actually chose DC Comics versus the Marvel Comics.
Oh yeah.
But
OG
again, this
superheroes.
hits on my point exactly.
Wait. I wasn't allowed to talk.
People,
I wasn't allowed to talk.
I've taken
I wasn't
my
allowed to
time
talk.
back from Mr.
I wasn't
Congressman.
allowed to talk.
Segue the floor.
Continue.
Must be on Team Nintendo. He wants the world just given to him.
I let you talk. Mr. Intellivision over the 2600. And now the Genesis versus the Super Nintendo. Someone has taste here. And it's not the guy with the Moonwalker or likes Miller Lite. Thank you. James, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I was personally attacked by Jonathan Craig. I'm going to address that. You're assuming that we will base our arguments based off the fact that Super Nintendo sold more than Sega Genesis, which it did.
I mean, you mentioned
By a
that
lot.
to start the show, so yeah, I would say that's a pretty foundational argument for you.
By a lot, but that is not why Super Nintendo was better. It's one of the metrics by which you can judge that it is better, which it
Okay.
is.
Okay, let me clip that out. You saying that really quick.
James is a natural follower.
It's not the only metric, but let's even examine how Sega Genesis was even able to get a foothold in the American marketplace, because Sega Genesis couldn't stand to go head to head with Nintendo's next gen console. They released it when the original Nintendo Entertainment System, was at the end of its run. So Sega saw that Nintendo was nearing the end of its run, so it's like, we're going to release our thing first, because we know that when Super Nintendo brings their shit, we won't be able to stand up to it. And that is exactly what happened. Where they gained most of their sales, where they gained their foothold, was in that small period of time when Nintendo, still putting out better games on the original Nintendo gameplay-wise, that's when Sega Genesis was able to even get a foothold. And I remember being at all the stores. Why on earth would I want to play Sega Genesis when your demo game was Echo the Dolphin, and meanwhile I got Super Mario World? And you want to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog? I'm going to take an arcade villain from Mario, put a red tie on him, call him Donkey Kong, make it country, and that game smashed Sonic the Hedgehog. There is no contest between Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. And all the games that define the genre that stand the test of time, almost all of them are on Super Nintendo or were ported better to Super Nintendo.
That's not factual, and also, you're talking about games about dolphins. Dolphins are the most intelligent creatures besides humans on the planet, and for you to,
Are they fun? Are they fun?
For you to celebrate games.
How's Marine World doing nowadays?
Not great. We shouldn't be enslaving them. I mean, I stand by that, but I will say I do agree with James on one point that he made, because he did talk about the strength of the catalog for NES, and like you, I agree. There were so many great games for NES, better games for NES than existed on Super Nintendo, and that was the best. They hit the ball out of the park with that first one. They shot for the stars and then just drifted down, even further down, and down even more. And Sega came out ahead of the Super Nintendo because their development team, their hardware production team, they were just better. They were on top of it. They were working harder, working faster, optimizing. And
it was a calculated decision to try and sell what they could when they could. That's all it was. Yeah, most of their accessories didn't even work. It's terrible.
I mean, I never had to blow in a game for Sega Genesis, I will say. Like, anecdotally, I only ever had to do that for Super Nintendo. It might have just been my experience, but it was piss poor cartridging.
You I think, have selective memory, because that's the only way that sometimes the things work for Sega too. It's the same technology. It's the same cartridge in a different box.
Well, agree to disagree. The Sega Genesis one was black, so it didn't look like the same cartridge to me.
So I think owners of
I
the
love
Sega
the look of the
Genesis would
Sega
keep their
Genesis.
system cleaner. Since it was black, you could actually see when the dust was collecting on it. So you went through meticulously cleaning it off, making sure it wasn't getting in there. Whereas the SNES, so gray and dull as it is,
First
the
of all,
dust just collected into it.
And the games are so boring and unplayable that they just sat on the shelf for so long and collected dust.
This is such a canard that the SNES had the dust issues. The original Nintendo is the one where we were blowing on the cartridges to get them to work. I never had to blow on a cartridge really to get it to work for Super Nintendo. Maybe mine was just cleaner, but I didn't run into those issues like I did with the regular Nintendo. Maybe that was the advent of those little plastic coverings they came out with as well. But I never ran into that issue on Super Nintendo.
That's because your Super Nintendo, you never took the Super Star Wars series out of your Super Nintendo, so you never had.
Incorrect, and we'll get into the game catalog. But multiple friends
real
I
monsters
played Genesis with. The controller for that system, while it looked good, it broke a lot. Multiple friends broken Sega Genesis controllers. Never ran into a broken Super Nintendo controller, not once.
I think that
never heard of
speaks
this
to
before.
I think that speaks to the skill level of the Sega Genesis players. I mean, it did most resemble the arcade experience with the 6-button layout. And
what game in the arcade had a 6-button layout outside of Street Fighter? Name one.
Well, I'm talking specifically about Street Fighter, which also released on Genesis before.
Did you know that it's more optimal to play Street Fighter on a controller right now than it is an arcade stick?
Yes,
and it's universally known.
Street Fighter 5. Yes,
it's really good. All of them, every single game. It's universally known.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
I'm more of a hitbox guy.
That's what
thank you.
And replicating the arcade experience in that generation of consoles. It's not the Champion Edition that came out for Genesis. It's 2 Turbo for Super Nintendo.
Turbo came out for Genesis, I believe.
No, Championship did.
Championship came out for Genesis.
Championship is more.
It was so lightweight.
Look cool. You'll get no argument. Look cool. It just broke a lot more.
Did you use any other button other than the first two for Sonic?
For Sonic, I don't think so.
It was just there for fluff.
I'll be honest though, and maybe this should transition us to the game catalog. Like, while I did play a lot of Sonic, I don't think that Sonic was the best title for Genesis. And I know that's the character that they hang their hat on, but there were so many great games for the Genesis, and Sonic, while it was fun and definitely harder than Mario and much more fast paced, any game where when you jump, it goes whoop, is just not exciting to me. But
you literally just said the Sonic sound.
No, dude, the Sonic sound is just the sound of rings being collected at rapid speed.
Rings over coins all day.
All day. My God.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're more utilitarian.
It's just hollow, just like this argument.
That's like Genesis. It's shiny on the outside, but there's no substance to it, and it'll be gone before you know it. Just like Genesis and Sega was. Let's get into the game catalogs, because I think Super Nintendo, the game catalog, and going back and just looking at all of the high quality games. Seglia, reiterate. What was it about Super Nintendo? They had a certificate of excellence, so to ensure quality.
It's just some bullshit made up by marketers.
You want me to give you a sticker, James? Say you're cool?
No,
yes.
Not from you, because you played Sega.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I wouldn't trust it. Your brand is flawed and faulty. But look at a game like Super Metroid, which is one of the most, to this day, one of the most replayable games there is, and defined the quote. It created its own subgenre along with Super Castlevania, the Metroidvania games. And to this day, Super Metroid is the one that really stands at the top of that list. It has not been duplicated yet. It is a phenomenal game. You look at A Link to the Past, which we talked about. It's maybe the greatest Legend of Zelda game ever made. It tops a lot of lists. The RPGs. Somebody said this to me, that the list of Super Nintendo RPGs of great ones they put out is greater than the list of great Sega Genesis games overall that were put out. So, Chrono Trigger, so many great games. But Seglia, what are some of yours from the SNES catalog?
I mean, there's so fucking many. I mean, I've got a top 100 list that's here that has A Link to the Past number 1. dude, Chrono Trigger, one of the best JRPGs of all time on there. Super Mario World, I've said this a billion times. I'm not a huge fan of it, but everybody else in the fucking world is. Final Fantasy VI. 8's the best one, by the way. Everybody loves Super Mario RPG. John, you said that too. That was really good.
It's a great game.
Can I say 4 games that'll just knock this entire thing out, or do you want me to wait for it? Star Fox.
Okay, go ahead.
Super Mario Kart. I forgot the third one, and then Mario Paint.
No.
Mario Paint is still used today to design
That
games and soundtracks.
Mario
So shut
Paint?
the fuck up. Give me my trophy right now.
Dude,
Art alive every day over Mario Paint.
Oh my god.
I don't even know what that is. Find me a
Holy
stream.
God.
Find me a stream of that game right now, and I'll find you one of
Art
Mario
Alive
Paint.
was the best. It was just like Microsoft Paint on Sega. I could use my paint bucket tool and fill in shapes.
Yeah, you know what?
Draw with
The
a
Mario
pencil.
Paint for Super NES came with a fucking mouse. Cyber Athlete over there. What do you got to say about that?
I mean, it is the optimal way to game, but unfortunately, the mouse didn't help you in any other games on the console.
Did you try?
I did not.
Did you?
I mean,
We should go back
Yeah,
and
of
try to play mouse.
Oh, the other
Link
game
to
I was
the
thinking
Past.
about was Turtles in Time.
A Link to the
yeah.
Past.
It's a great one.
It doesn't just top Super Nintendo lists. A lot of people put it as the greatest video game of all time, across all consoles. And you played it on the Super Nintendo. That's where you could find Link to the Past. The importance and the quality of that game cannot be overstated. And I encourage all of you, after this is over, to go get your emulator or your classic Super Nintendo going and play that game, because it holds up. And that's the thing that I keep coming back to with so many of the Super Nintendo games, is they stood the test of time. And that is what, to me, makes Super Nintendo the undisputed king of this debate, is that so many more of their games hold up today better than the Sega Genesis games.
For sure. I mean, you have games like games that I haven't even talked about, right? Bust a Move, classic arcade game that's still around and is replicated by phones all the fucking time. Bomberman, your dad had a Super Bomberman, had great taste. We still play it in party game.
Bomberman was also
party
out for
houses.
Sega.
Harvest Moon.
Yeah,
Harvest Moon is
look no
something
further than
that's-
Animal Crossing now for influences.
I mean, the greatest game of the 2010s, Stardew Valley, is a direct rip of Harvest Moon. Kirby. And then one of the quintessential things that I completely forgot about until I was just scrolling down, it had the fucking Super Game Boy too. You could plug all your games into that. So you could play Pokemon if you wanted to, Red and Blue. You could play Alleyway. You could play the other Link games if you wanted to. It was actually backwards compatible to another console.
That is pretty clutch.
I like that they came out. They had Super Mario World, and then they were like, shit. The people that play our console are not very skilled and are having trouble with this game. How do we slow it down? Oh, let's make a floaty character that just bounces around in the air. It's slow motion, as slow as humanly possible. No. Oh, see, I guess Yoshi's another example, because I was talking about Kirby.
Ugh.
Multiple flawed characters. But about the Super Game Boy you were talking about there, Sex, is with Sega, they had a similar thing, but instead it was forward compatible. The Sega Nomad. It was basically a Game Gear that you could plug Sega Genesis cartridges, and take it on the go. Yes, it took 10 AA batteries, but you could play Sonic, you could play Golden Axe, you can play Moonwalker, Road Rash 2 in the car, on the go. Doesn't matter. No one else was doing that. And that
I think
is better than getting to play my Game Boy on the TV.
No one at all would be doing it, because it would drain the batteries so fast. You could do it for about 10 minutes.
I thought poor people can't afford batteries and stuff, James.
Well, again, a lot of eccentric strangos apparently played the Genesis.
I think it's important to state Genesis did have Phantasy Star, did have other,
Shining Force,
competitive
awesome.
RPGs. I think that probably the best RPG or fantasy type game for Sega was Golden Axe. In my opinion,
is a great game. You will get no argument.
Yeah,
from me.
and that's where I think you could maybe come close to arguing SNES's RPG catalog but I do think SNES did have the better RPG catalog. I think that where Sega excelled was side scrollers and just pure action and high speed, high velocity games.
You got to do the horizontal brawlers. I mean, you got to talk Streets of Rage. You got to talk Alter Beast. Golden Axe fits into there. Even like the Comic Zone you're talking about was basically a brawler going through comic panels in there.
And then you had like the hyper realistic ones, like the Batman, not Batman and Robin, but like the Batman movie one. Oh my God, such a great game. And then the Jurassic Park game, which was completely different for Super Nintendo, but for Sega, just a very difficult game, but also very, very, very fun. And just, captured the spirit of the movie really well.
I will give you this. So in terms of the Sega Genesis catalog, you were gracious enough to, I mean, it's not a stretch, but to admit that SNES had the way better RPG catalog. But
yeah,
that's one kind of game.
The Disney ports, I do default to Sega more than I do to Super Nintendo, and that's fine. You can have Aladdin and the Lion King game on Sega Genesis. I think movie ports in general, though, when you look at the Super Star Wars franchise and the Indiana Jones games and on, those are still the greatest movie adaptation to video games ever. The Super Star Wars games are phenomenal. And the fact that back in that time period, you were able to play as Luke, Han, Chewie, Leia, all these different characters and go the sort of attention to detail that you got and the way it took you through each movie was insane. They were so phenomenally well done.
What was cool about those games is that they kind of showed you like different game formats and genres within the same game. Like you'd be in side scroller mode, and then all of a sudden you'd be on one of the land speeders in one of those levels. And I think that was really, really cool.
No, yeah, that absolutely. But I don't want to dominate the game catalog because I think maybe Sega released a couple of them. Go ahead, Mark.
One thing about it, we seem to keep talking about RPGs and we're talking about brawlers. There's a whole extra segment of games. I mean, the sport game was really dominated by Sega, bringing in Madden, first of all, which is a huge selling franchise to
also
this day.
Super Nintendo.
It originated for Sega, though. And you can't deny that. Mike Tyson Punch-Out. Same thing there. Andre Agassi Tennis, yo.
Punch-Out is a Nintendo property.
Wasn't Mike Tyson on the Segas?
No, Punch-Out is a Nintendo property, sir. Thank you for making our point. And Super Punch-Out on SNES, also a phenomenal game. Thanks, Mark.
Man, not as good as Madden. It's all right.
Way better than Madden. Like, oh, sweet. The same game every year, whereas you get Super Punch-Out and it's incredibly memorable. Maybe not to you because you thought it was on your console, but it wasn't.
It was such a good game, it should have been on Sega. That must have been why. It just makes sense that it's there.
Well, dude, you want to talk about
plus
action
the violence?
Games?
Yeah.
How about maybe the best action platformer maybe ever, Mega Man X? That was on Super Nintendo, and that is another one of those ultimate replay value, undisputed classics. Mega Man X for Super Nintendo, one of the best action platformers of all time. Rap.
Oh, we did have a Mega Man game for Sega. It wasn't Mega Man X, but it was a different Mega Man title. But
it wasn't as good.
Really, when you played one, you played all. Let's
no, that's God. The whole point about Mega Man X is that it rejuvenated the whole franchise, Mark. That's the whole point. Maybe the ones you played on Sega was one and the same, but not Mega Man X.
Ooh, I mean, look, if you arm.
Oh yeah, if you were into little boys shooting glowing balls out of their robotic arms, that's cool, and that's what you were into. Meanwhile, we had Shinobi.
Yeah, throwing shurikens.
I'll take
that. Fucking you took that from Mega Man. That's the worst Mega Man. And my name is Shinobi.
Meanwhile, we had the X-Men game. You may have heard of it.
Yeah, the worst tournament, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
No.
Come on.
Nintendo had an X-Men game based off of the animated series, which was incredible.
No. We had the arcade game.
Yeah, I'm aware of what you had, and it belonged in the arcade,
which is the quintessential one.
And you play it in the arcade.
Real, that's why Sega had the 6-button controller. You could play any arcade game you wanted on that platform.
I also wanted to just go back to, again, how cool the Genesis was, how attractive it was. It attracted brands that that wouldn't normally be involved in gaming to it. Again, like Ronald McDonald's Treasureland Adventure, but also a great game, and one of I think 3 that my parents bought me. Cool Spot, which was a side scroller where you were playing as the 7-Up red Spot. I mean, it doesn't get any more innovative than Cool Spot.
It's sad. That's all you've offered is gimmicky and sad. Between Michael Jackson, Ronald McDonald, and the 7-Up logo. Make 7-Up yours. Genesis sucks.
I will agree
Cool
that Genesis's marketing campaign was awesome. It was great. It was cool. It was fun for everybody. It still didn't fucking help them in the long run. Where the fuck is Sega now?
Yeah. And I guess that's one of the main things about Super Nintendo
is that
it set up the
by
consoles,
better things.
It set up their console, the N64. It set up their franchises. It put them in a better place. Are you happier now than you were 4 years ago? Super Nintendo franchises could say yes. Sega Genesis, the Saturn, go fuck yourself. That thing was a bomb. Sega Genesis was unsustainable. Again, they released at the right time to make a cash grab for a very limited period of time. That was in between the NES and Super NES release. And then after that, nothing. Shadows and dust.
I don't see what's wrong with the capitalist market.
Does anybody remember Sega CD? I don't either.
Sega CD, they actually released one of the greatest games of all time, Ultra Versus Prime.
Oh
available
my God.
on the Sega CD.
Quit hawking your dead.
If you want to know more about it, hop on to the the Ultra Monthly podcast. You can check that out on Spotify and iTunes and other various things.
I support that shoehorning product placement in, because that's exactly the type of game that Genesis would release. They just take the brand. Like if Genesis came out today, they'd have like a Dasani water video game that they would release.
The thing was, they were even developing a version for the SNES, but the SNES's platform was such garbage it couldn't keep up with how awesome Ultraverse was, so it never came out. Yes, it is
accurate.
Check
it out.
Can we actually
Ultraverse
go
Prime.
You want to go through the nerdy shit right now of like the actual stuff
Ben.
going on? I don't have it in front of me. I think that you should do it. But the Genesis was less powerful than the Super Nintendo in almost everything, if not everything.
Here's where I think we can agree in some ways, and maybe disagree in others, but hopefully we can all come together here. I think both consoles had a really great game catalog. The Super Nintendo did have games that have stood the test of time. Maybe I would argue because after Nintendo 64, the catalog for Nintendo became so much smaller and so insular that the only way you could enjoy Nintendo is to look back at Super Nintendo and 64 and be like, man, weren't things so great back then? And I think Sega, and I think I'm not arguing that Genesis has stood the test of time, but I think that in some ways they opened the doors for Nintendo competitors to realize ways in which you could attack Nintendo and ways in which you could expand gaming outside of what Nintendo did and make it exciting and grow a fan base, many of which have become larger than Nintendo.
That's an interesting point, and I'm glad you brought it up.
It took Sega, and it took a company investing a crazy amount of resources in initiatives, a lot of which didn't work and ended up bankrupting them. But I don't know if they actually went bankrupt, but I think that the chipping away of the armor of Nintendo, I think, was initially done by Genesis, and other big consoles took that up after Sega struggled in future years.
Genesis showed that gods can bleed.
Yes.
The console that would be king.
Gods can bleed, but they're still gods, Mark. They're still gods.
But here's the thing: James roots for the Empire in Star Wars. He roots for for status quo, and also James also just like in this argument where James believes that things get progressively better over time. He also believes that
talking about?
He also believes that things like the Star Wars franchise gets better over time.
No, it does not.
Were the original movies good? Yes.
Was Super Nintendo 3 are the only ones worth watching?
Yeah. And was Super Nintendo better than NES? Yes. Just like episodes 1, 2, and 3 were better. And then was N64 better than that? Yep. Just like episodes, whatever the fuck these more recent ones were better than the originals. It just gets better over time.
As one of those recency biased clones, and that it could not be further from the truth of who I am. Now he's just going for below the belt character assassination, because you guys have just been stymied at every turn. The game catalog discussion I thought would have been much more spirited, but it crapped out in between Michael Jackson, Ronald McDonald, and 7-Up.
And Super Punch-Out. Super Punch-Out, don't remember that.
Super Punch-Out, which didn't even exist on Genesis.
There's nothing wrong with Moonraker.
With you Hayseeds?
Can I just give honorable mention to the Beavis and Butthead game and Ristar, which was a game that I remembered but couldn't remember the name of and couldn't find for years. And because Google has advanced so much as we've gotten older, I've been able to dig it up and find it again. And my God, that was a good side scroller.
What about Toe Jam and Earl? Definitive of the time. Definitive of the time.
I would
so good. So Rock could have put that on Nintendo.
Listen,
if you haven't played Jurassic Park and the old Sega Batman game, do yourself a favor and play those two at least, because those two games are incredibly fun and incredibly well done, and to me represent what Sega Genesis was.
I think you guys glossed over one of your greatest games. You mentioned it, but I mean, Streets of Rage is an excellent game for Sega Genesis. However, I'll still take Final Fight.
Final Fight, motherfuckers.
Final Fight. Give me Hager and Cody all fucking day. You never heard of it? Well, that's probably because you're too busy playing the 7-Up game or the Ronald McDonald.
Cool Spot was excellent. You were fighting crabs with bubbles.
Is there something you want to admit? You've been talking about that Michael Jackson game, Mark. Are you all right?
Dude, he helped all those kids, him and Bubbles, getting there, pulling them out of closet, setting them free.
Plied him with Bubbles. Dude. God dang, dude.
That's a great game.
Ridiculous.
Great game.
Ridiculous. I expect so much more.
I don't know if there's a game on the Genesis that Super Nintendo doesn't have a version of, even if it is later, that it didn't top. Is there like a what is the Zenith game for Genesis in a specific genre?
I think Golden Axe was probably its best RPG or fantasy game.
And you've already gone on record in saying that Super Nintendo.
I wouldn't call it an RPG in the slightest. Sorry to say.
What would you call it?
I mean, it's just sword and sorcery arcade side scroller. Yeah. I mean, it's quintessential.
It maybe like early action RPG. I don't know because it's not a turn-based RPG. You know, it's completely different than that. I would say that like Sonic is a completely different type of side-scrolling game than Mario. So even though they are like the faces of the consoles in a way, like it is kind of hard to compare them because they just play so differently.
It's the same game.
I mean, Sonic 3D was an awesome foray into that. When that really started. Sonic Spinball.
Wait.
Yes.
Sonic 3D
was amazing.
Absolutely trucked in every category by Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2. Like the only
competition. They're not the same games. They're not the same kind
Sonic
of game.
3D was incredible, dude. That was a great game.
The only competition that Mario has comes from other Nintendo properties. Sonic is not even on Mario's radar. They took an arcade villain from Mario and turned him into a bigger star than Sonic the Hedgehog ever was. Link is a bigger star than Sonic, both of which in Nintendo. There's no
Where's
tier.
the Link movie?
Like Sonic.
Where's the Link movie, James? Where's Link?
30 years later, and listen, anyone that knows shit about
still holds
video
up.
games will take Legend of Zelda over anything Sonic's done. And if you don't agree with that, you don't belong on this podcast.
Sonic is definitive of the 90s, super cool, super fast. It's about time he got a movie. Amongst how many different animated TV series? Mark. Yeah.
We're still waiting for the Zack Snyder cut of that too.
Dude,
I'm sure.
the original Sonic cartoon was amazing. That was great.
It's like Sonic the Hedgehog gave way to Crash Bandicoot. I'll take Mario.
I don't know, dude. I just can't support animal cruelty the way Mario does, dude. He cuts off raccoon tails and raccoon tails and tapes it to his butt so he can fly. I mean,
and how
he
many
rides
times
around on a dinosaur that.
Yeah, how many times can he let down Peach and let her get taken over and over and over? Stupid plumber.
Hey,
What
look,
is he doing?
Him as a boyfriend's not on trial here. You know, just as my views on movies are not on trial. But how about racing games? Super Mario Kart and F-Zero, both of which genre-defining racing games. Most racing games were boring and slow before F-Zero turned it up a notch and you got speed. And then Mario Kart was an entirely different style of racing game, one of the most unilaterally praised franchises of racing games ever.
We had more diversity in styles of racing game because we had the classic racing games, but we also had Road Rash where you could literally beat the hell out of your opponent while driving next to them. And again, skitching, like you cannot beat punching a dude who's trying to rollerblade and pass you on your left. Like, I mean, it's catharsis right there.
God in heaven. Any games from the Sega catalog that you guys haven't mentioned that you'd like to bring up?
Vector Man.
Oh, God.
Vector Man was cool.
Yeah. We also we did have
fast.
We did have a Zelda ripoff.
Great.
That no one knows the name of, but that's worth mentioning as well.
God, what is it though? You don't even know the name of it. This is brutal. Absolutely brutal. Good Lord.
How about the Mutant League series? Mutant League Football, Mutant League Hockey. Those were phenomenal. Those were awesome. Those were super fun.
You found a sports game that was on Sega. Good work, Mark.
To be fair, NBA Jam was on Sega.
Yeah, we did
SNES.
have we had a ton. We also had like NCAA games. Like we did have a good amount of
both
games.
had sports games. The one that was Nintendo specific, Super Punch-Out, just happened to be the better of all of them. Sorry. This is the way one goes.
I don't think that was the best sports game.
Well, we didn't even mention it. I said NHL 94.
NHL 94 was good, but it was on both platforms.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dude, Super Punch-Out was so good.
I played that a lot. That's what made me a fan of the Devils. 94. I used to play that all the time, just fighting and shooting.
I do think that, you know, and we can get into this a little bit here, but a game like Sunset Riders, which it was an arcade game, but ported so well to Super Nintendo, and both consoles did that, and I think both did it well. But when I think of quintessential port from arcade to console, again, I come back to Street Fighter II Turbo as the best job maybe ever of doing that. And it's just that to me, you know, there's a reason why people remember Street Fighter II Turbo and not Champion Edition. SNES just did it better. You don't hear anything about Champion Edition ever.
No, it's because M Bison is broken in Champion Edition.
Segs, you're in the Street Fighter world. Am I wrong?
I'm not qualified enough to say anything about it, but I do know that everybody has played this. Whenever I ask somebody, how do you know about Street Fighter, from like random people, because, you know, like we talk to ESPN, we talk to people like that, they all know Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo from Super NES. That's what they remember.
That's what it is.
Dude, I'm looking right here. Street Fighter 2 Turbo for Sega Genesis. Let's Plays on YouTube.
And I confused Mike Tyson with Evander Holyfield.
Is this real?
Well, hey, you know what? Yeah.
Sega had Evander Holyfield, and I don't have much to back that up. Just like
Mike Tyson, Mark, you bit off more than you could chew. So, sorry. Well, I think on that note, we should take another break. We'll come back. We'll give our closing thoughts on Sega versus SNES, and, you know, maybe some highfalutin notions as well in terms of where console gaming has gone and will go. But this has been a very spirited and a lot of fun debate. More on the other side of the Best Damn Nerd Show.
I'm sorry, Tom.
And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. Bimbo Jimbo here with John Craig, Chris Seglia, and Mark Trix, as we have been rousingly debating Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis. As we wrap things up with our closing statements here, I just want to begin and say that Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis, it was like a gamer civil war, you know, brother versus brother, the likes of which we haven't seen before or really since. And in a lot of ways, the Sega Genesis is like the Confederacy. It's a very brief, sad period in video game history.
I thought you were going Marvel Civil War.
Propped up by
that's
people
what I thought too.
It's propped up by people who cling to its past and fell in love with a glorious legend that really wasn't all that glorious and isn't rooted in reality.
Please, can we? No.
Yeah.
No,
steer
no,
clear.
It
no,
does
no.
make you wonder. Bottom
No,
line,
no.
Yeah.
Genesis players,
Mm-mm.
they order Pepsi. America doesn't run on Pepsi. Never has, never will. It's a Coca-Cola nation. You hear, is Pepsi okay? And in reality, no, it isn't. And it never will be. And neither was Genesis. Make mine Coca-Cola, make mine Nintendo. You know, they believe all those crazy conspiracies, the Genesis owners. You go into their home, you see some weird stuff. America's Super Nintendo, not Secession and Sega Genesis. And by every metric, Super Nintendo outdid the Genesis. Genesis not only got that foothold by releasing between NES and Super Nintendo, and the original Nintendo, which we barely even touched on, it still held its own on the strength of its games. But then when SNES came, blew everything out of the water. And so that's just, what I have to say about Super Nintendo. Again, it set up the future of console games. It redefined so many genres, and it stands the test of time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to apologize to the audience at home. I know we were bludgeoned nearly half to death with Link to the Past because, ultimately that is one of the only good games for Super Nintendo. And it's really all that they can stand on. And with that, I just want to say A Link to the Past sold over 4 million units, James, as I'm sure you're aware.
I'm well aware. So did Donkey Kong Country.
Very impressive feat that was also accomplished by 4 different Sonic games and Disney's Aladdin for Sega Genesis. And with that, I just want to say Jeff Budd sends his regards because he told me to say that.
Shocker.
And he said, F you for making him pick a side here.
Well, Jeff Budd certainly would never turn on A Link to the Past. And you look at many SNES properties that also sold over 4 million units. And again, total units sold by any and every metric favors Super Nintendo. There's you look at Super Mario World, which I noticed that you neglected to include in your little tactical attack there, way outsold Sonic. Donkey Kong Country outsold
because it came with a console.
Ridiculous. Seglia, if you have anything to add, or Mark?
Do you want to go first or do you want me to go?
You can go first.
All right. I went last the other time. I barely talked about Star Fox and the graphical superiority of the 3D and the super FX of that genre. I barely talked about the Super 7, which was the thing that enhanced games like Mario Kart and Donkey Kong Country. I barely talked about the games that actually, maybe people never heard of, like Super Puyo Puyo, Sim City. Everyone's heard of Sim City, but was that available on Genesis? Probably not. Dragon Quest,
Mana.
Final Fantasy V, the worst version of 6. And so many others. So many others. And my favorite game outside of like the mainstream ones, Super Adventure Island. Those games are iconic, and so iconic that you can still buy them today, unlike Sega games.
Look at any market today for Super Nintendo games, and it's so much higher than the market for Sega Genesis games. We didn't even talk about the game Flashback, the quest for identity. We barely touched on Star Fox, like you said. The idea that we're just standing only on Link to the Past is ridiculous. Super Metroid, Super Castlevania 4, Shadowrun, Chrono Trigger. We demonstrated last segment that the Super Nintendo game catalog, all you guys could come up with is fast food, Michael Jackson, and soda pop.
There's nothing more American than what you just said. So you should love it of all people. But what I will say and remind the audience at home is, we could just keep rereading the same list of titles over and over and over. and yes, there is absolutely a reason why Super Nintendo games are more valuable. And that's because that was the best that Nintendo had to offer.
The
That was the
world had
best
to
that
offer.
that was the best that Nintendo had to
The
offer and
greatest
has had to
iteration.
offer. Yes, it was. It truly was. And so even though every time a new Nintendo console comes out, we get a Mario game, we get a Zelda game, we get a Mario Kart, like you can go down the litany of genres and you get a title in those guaranteed. Are they good? No. Most of the time they're not. Not after Nintendo 64. Switch, some of them have been okay. Some of them have been pretty lame. But generally, I think it's important to reiterate the fact that Sega had amazing games, and while people aren't holding on to those games now because there have been so many great games over time coming out for different consoles that Sega Genesis opened the door for, Nintendo fans can only hold on to the old titles, the old versions of these franchises that exist today, which generally are just not good. I mean, Jeff Budd, the biggest, Zelda fan in the group, who props Link to the Past up as the best, Zelda game of all time, hates where the properties have gone since then. It's been all downhill, and he abhors the most recent one.
That is not what is on trial here tonight.
Again, I think we are misrepresenting why the price of these games is so high. I think the demand is high for them because people are just bludgeoned with so many bad titles over and over and over in these franchises that the only way to get any enjoyment out of these franchises is to go back 25 years. They don't go 30
back
years.
to Sega.
Did no one actually played Breath of the Wild, huh?
I did. I actually liked it.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I just watched it too. I didn't even play it. I just watched people play it, and it was fucking amazing.
But I thoroughly enjoyed Breath of the Wild. I'm just saying, like, that, the complaints have been loud from Nintendo fans for a long time.
You make sort of our own point, though, because what Super Nintendo did is it took franchises that needed a revamp from Nintendo to Super Nintendo, and it did all that. And it didn't. They didn't just rest on their laurels. They reinvented genres, created subgenres, reinvigorated franchises, and yes,
they did.
What's not on trial is where they went.
And that would have been the last time. That's the last time they did it.
But the topic tonight is Sega versus Super Nintendo, and what Super Nintendo did well is all of those things.
And I think it just speaks to the fact that the Sega Genesis games were so good and so outstanding that people took great care of their consoles and their games and are still playing them today. They don't need to go back and rebuy them because they didn't throw them in the trash like they did their Super Nintendo
You're
games.
right. I'm sorry. I'll go.
And in fact, Sega still continues to have consoles produced by At Games, so people can continue loving those cartridges and still playing them and get to enjoy them at home to this day. Nintendo, puts things out time and again, but limits how much they can put them to print and so forth, where Sega continues to produce and ensure the joy goes on for generations.
As probably the only one in this room who's been to Japan more than two hands can count now, they are still making Super Nintendo games, aka Super Famicom games. You can go to Akihabara and buy Super Nintendo games because people are making them for them right now.
Yeah, you can also get them for free just by subscribing to Nintendo Switch Online or whatever the service is, which is
we don't know anything about that here. Nintendo ninjas are real.
Mark, do you have anything else you'd like to add to your?
I just think for anyone that really
band of rebels,
I think just anyone that really thinks the Super NES was the greatest console of all time, just because it was the best thing Nintendo's put out, really just has Sega to thank for it, because without them putting the pressure in the market for consumers to know that they actually have a choice than just take what's served up to them by Nintendo, they never would have tried to produce games of such quality and depth that you say is in there without having that competitor to push them. And so Sega just revolutionized gaming for us as an entire culture. So
congratulations,
Congratulations,
thank you, martyr. The idea that somehow that Super Nintendo wasn't in development as it was, and then all of a sudden everything changed when Sega came out is laughable.
Well, you have to agree that competition does make does make
no
things
doubt
better.
about it. And look, it was great fun.
You can read all about this, and I mean all about this. This is a book that was amazing, and I think it's going to be developed into like a Netflix series or show or movie or something like that. It's called Console Wars. You should read it. It tells the tale of Tom Kalinske, who is the CEO of Sega of America, versus Nintendo versus Sega of Japan. All three of them were at war at all times, and you should check it out. I actually make everybody in Tenno who's on salary actually read that thing, because it is so telling of the times, and it is so telling on why you motherfuckers are wrong.
Well, I think anybody listening tonight will probably come away with that that opinion. You know,
I don't know. I think the Genesis fans are going to come out in full strength. And
I think they're going to be more mad at you guys than they are at us, because all you could come up with is Michael Jackson, Cool Spot, and Ronald McDonald.
Those are good games. Just because you're looking down from your perch built on the backs of Sega Genesis creators,
and I think it's important to state, like, we are coming at this from the point of view of experience, because we've played the games that you mentioned. You haven't played these Sega games. Yes, you did play Sonic. You played Sonic.
I played Sonic. I played Cool Spot. I didn't play Ronald McDonald's whatever adventure.
Yeah,
bro, I had rich friends.
but you, I'm telling you guys,
in playing as Ronald McDonald. Sue me. I played Echo.
I'm telling you guys,
it was just as underwhelming as it looked in the store.
I know puzzles are complicated, James.
They're not really. Not Echo the Dolphin. It just is a boring game. You're a fucking dolphin. Stupid.
I'm not saying that this is going to make you come back and like admit that Genesis was better, or change kind of like the nostalgia that you have for your experiences that you had on the console. But I do encourage you to go back and play some of those Genesis classics, because you will appreciate them. The Jurassic Park game, amazing. Like I said, and you know, I think Lion King was more similar, but like the Aladdin game for Genesis was, again, amazing. Very, very difficult. I would argue that those games were more difficult than games are today. I mean, I know people like to prop up like Dark Souls and like Escape from Tarkov as these incredibly difficult games in their genre, but like Sega and Super Nintendo for that matter, but Sega especially had a lot of very, very, very difficult games that I don't even know if kids these days could finish.
I'm totally with you. I would love to play these games. How?
So Sega does continue to release.
Thank you.
Sega does continue to release collected editions and things like that. They continue to produce.
On what console?
Different newer generations things. Personally,
like the Switch.
Personally, I played Shining Force recently, a great RPG, team-based RPG, on my PS3 from a collected edition CD of PS3. It was fantastic, and you can still buy the consoles. Go to any Kohl's around America, right, and you can find yourself a Sega Genesis to pick up with 65 to 85 pre-installed games that can play cartridges that you find anywhere on eBay, swap meets, and so forth. You can still
those aren't official, man. Those are bootleg.
We got heated and spirited here, and we're competitive by nature and everything like that. I mean, I could very easily cut low at John the fact that he is notoriously elitist and hates console gamers anyway, so he really shouldn't be in this debate. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the high road.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, Genesis was like the last console that I played, although I did own other consoles, like Nintendo 64 deserves its own episode entirely, because I do believe that was the greatest console ever made. But that's another console war for another time. But Genesis was like the last true console that I put a lot of hours into before I went all in on computer games.
It was so good that it drove John away from consoles forever. That's awesome. No, but I will.
He knew it couldn't get better.
I will grant you that Golden Axe is a great game. Mortal Kombat, although better in the arcade, the fact that it was on Genesis, very cool. Sonic the Hedgehog, congratulations. Pepsi got a logo and a mascot. But that's it. And there were some other good games, some indie developer games, and I do agree with John that maybe, I guess the best thing that Genesis did was sort of exist for a period of time, surprise Nintendo to where they just demolished them. Just kept putting out great game after great game, and Genesis couldn't keep up after that early sort of surprise attack. And then Super Nintendo is like, all right, we're back, we're fine, it's over. Wrap. Done.
Yeah, I guess it really comes down to who you want to be as a consumer. If you love just
God.
being a lemming and following the crowds,
Not
or
a
if you
fan of
want to
that
be more of a
franchise, to be
free
honest.
thinker and trust smaller businesses and shopping local and upstarts and the underdog, I guess
You're right.
you know.
Sega Genesis
Mark-
is a real mom and pop.
Mark, if I can interject here on that, are you saying that we should trust the marketing of Sega Genesis and make sure that we go with the cool one and the one that corporations are telling us to go for?
Yeah.
Whereas
mom and
Nintendo
pop
had none of
Telling you to
that.
open your
of
mind and think for yourself.
Nintendo
That's
didn't
what's
need any
cool.
of that. Nintendo didn't need to have attack ads on
They
Sega
made
for
attack
anything.
ads eventually. They were caught with
Yeah,
their
because they
pants
were
down. They didn't
bored.
know what to do. They're so family friendly focused. They didn't understand like this
Read the book,
good,
Mark. They were-
strong American marketing.
The
You should
mom
read the
and
book.
pop
They were
video
literally
game
bored.
release of McDonald's. Yeah, that was just a small little burger joint down on the corner. Just doing the best that it could. And why
They
don't
were
you have
probably
a pop
only
of
starting to
7
reach
Up,
their
too?
first billion by then. Okay.
Oh my god. Ridiculous. This has been a lot of fun going round and round with y'all. We will do another console war or 2 episodes. Look, there's a lot you can do. There's PlayStation, Xbox, N64. There's so many different consoles.
Yeah.
And versus
PlayStation
them.
Xbox is probably
I mean,
harder than NES Genesis to be honest.
I agree, and I think we need to save that one. I think we need to save that one until we get closer to the PS5, Xbox Series X, because that's a conversation that we're just going to be legitimately having as friends. Seglia, you might be the only one who just gets both by default, but the rest of us legitimately will be having that debate.
Yeah, I don't know if I legally can say anything bad about either of those.
We will cross that bridge when we come to it. But I
You can be the moderator.
remember even in my own household, my brother had an N64. I had a Sony PlayStation. Battle lines were drawn yet again inside a single household. We will get into all of that, but this has been a lot of fun.
I also think we need to do a PC versus console episode, because while it is cute and quaint that you can compare one console to another, the fact that it's PC gaming versus console as a whole.
No, thank you.
As a whole?
I already know that.
As a whole?
No,
there you go again.
As a whole?
There you go again. That's all he's got. It's just John's argument has just consisted of cut lows on me, character assassination, because right out of the gate, you guys just fell face first in the mud. But this has been a super, and I emphasize super, amount of fun. That is going to do it for us this week here at the Best Damn Nerd Show. Have a great week, everybody. And remember, if you're a nerd, always say it loud and say it proud.
Sega.